Hey everyone, welcome to episode 44 of AI GTM Talks. My name is Iyer. Um, we have an exciting episode for you all today. We will be talking about building trust with buyers in the AI era. What does it take? What do we all need to do? And to do that, we have my co-moderator in the Pavilion signal-based GTM channel. She's an amazing, speaker. She knows a lot about this area. Victoria Albert is here. Victoria, how are you?
Hi, Mani.
Thanks for joining us. So I'm going to put up one slide here, Victoria, just so folks know a little bit more about you. Maybe we can start here. So I know you are the CMO at Infuse. Is that right? You want to tell us a little bit?
That's right. Yeah. So in Infuse, we're a global demand generation partner to SMB through mid-market and enterprise companies. We've been in business for, since 2012, a number of years.
Yeah.
We're built on AI before it was called AI,
Yeah.
right? So since day one, and I'm really lucky to have been with the company for now over 6 years.
Got it.
I wake up every morning, pinch myself because it almost never happens with a marketer. But we're having a hell of a time pulsing the market and doing our research and most importantly, serving our clients.
Yeah. So Victoria, just for the folks listening, let me first explain what this talk series is about. So,
Yeah.
we've been bringing on AI GTM tech CEOs who are doing deep dives into different areas within the go-to-market space. We also brought on revenue leaders. We bring on GTM operators who are experts in different parts of GTM. So I think today's episode, to me at least, is interesting. It's a kind of a different kind of an episode in that you all at Infuse have been doing some amazing, surveys, and you have done a recent survey in the last, 3 months in the Q4 of last year, 2,300 marketing and IT leaders, all around how AI is transforming go-to-market. I think you have some insights to share with everybody. So folks, that's what today's episode is all about. So I'm going to turn it over to Victoria. I know you have a few slides to get into. And from there, we're going to have a discussion. So interesting content. Hopefully, everybody's going to find super useful. Over to you, Victoria, if you want to, kick that off.
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, thank you so much for having me today. I
Sure.
really appreciate the opportunity to speak with your audience about this research. I will say that this research is incredibly deep. We've been doing this for a number of years now, which
Okay.
means we can sort of concatenate the data and do some year-over-year comparison from a sort of almost a data science perspective, but not quite.
Yeah.
And I've just collected maybe 5 or 6 slides for this discussion this morning,
Yeah.
sort of based on the audience profile of your audience, Money. There's a lot more where it came from. So if anyone here throughout the conversation has any questions, we're watching the chat. Please go ahead and ask those questions. I'm sure we'll have time at the very end to come back to this. But let me get into the data.
Yeah.
So, like I said, we've been doing this for a number of years now. This year, we've surveyed quite a few senior marketing leaders as well as senior tech leaders. This is a global survey. It is SMB through enterprise. This year's data is heavier on enterprise than SMB. There's quite a bit of mid-market data in here as well.
Okay.
I'm not going to go into those data statistics here on this presentation because I really would like to get into the takeaways and what this all means. So the key takeaway here is based on this quantitative research and really the million interactions that we're watching with our clients at Infuse and constantly pulsing the data, is that what B2B buyers and go-to-marketers are telling us is that the market is shifting. We know it's been shifting really ever since we came out of the COVID pandemic. I can't believe I just said that word again, right? But the market is shifting so rapidly this year. But some of these numbers are really, really important for us to grasp and understand.
Okay.
The takeaway, I'm not going to go through. I'm not going to beat around the bush. This year's Voice of the Buyer research really surfaced 3 themes for us at Infuse. Number one, buyers and business leaders are heading into this year under intense pressure and expectations. They're seeking measurable operational value from their AI initiatives. I have a whole slide on this. We'll talk a little bit about sort of what's under the covers here, but the basic premise there is that the era of experimentation is over. The investors, the boards, the exec teams are all looking to see it's AI go time. Stop experimenting and start delivering ROI from these investments. So that's the first trend. The second trend is that our buyers are really drowning in the sea of synthetic content, is what I call synthetic content. I think it's no surprise to anyone on this call that probably more than 50% of the internet now of the internet is synthetic content. It's not human produced content, right? And so buyers are really seeking trusted, credible, high quality intelligence to enable their decision making. Really, they need information that anticipates and answers their questions. And this is really critical because oftentimes they're not getting the information that immediately answers their questions. And I know that we'll geek out a little bit on AEO GEO, you and I coming up in a few minutes. This is going to be the underlying theme in that discussion. Buyers have more information than ever, but they trust less of it. And so that gap between what they know and what they believe is where deals go to die. And so that's the second theme. The third theme in this research is that buyers are looking for real proof points from vendors, that vendors are delivering that demonstrated value in 2026. And so as marketers, we must evolve our go-to-market strategies, our workflows, the information, how we deliver the information, who we talk to, and how we talk to it about, in order to really build that discoverability to revenue engine. So really the takeaway here is our buyers do not need more content. I'll say it again. Nobody out there needs more content, but we need information to make the decision, make sure that we get the buy-in from the buying group and don't get fired at the end of the day because the decision we made may or may not have been the wrong decision. And so this is what we call the trust architecture. If you read anything that we put out this year as part of our outlook, you'll see sort of a playbook for a trust architecture that we're building with our partners and our clients. Let me take you through some of this data. So now we're peeling off the onion a little bit, and I'll take you sort of one chart at a time.
Okay.
This is a question that we asked these buying executives. What primary outcome do you want to achieve from your technology investments? And here in this chart, I'm giving you 2025 versus 2026 data, so we have that year-over-year comparison. By the way, if anybody wants to geek out and go earlier into the years, we have those data points as well. We can take that offline. But in 2025, last year, operating efficiency dominated at 41%. Buyers were asking, how do I cut costs? That was 2025. No surprise, we've all gone through it, I'm sure. This year, efficiency dropped to 31%. It's still critical. It's just not the dominating question that we get asked by the board and by our investors. With the same token, revenue growth jumped from 17 to 20%. Not a huge growth, but a pretty significant growth year over year, nevertheless. So what does this tell us? Buyers are focused on driving outcomes from their tech investments, and so are our executives. They want AI that generates revenue, not just AI that saves time. Revenue and customer growth are moving into a high priority cycle in 2026. And so here's the insight for the conversation. I know that there are marketers, maybe go-to-market teams, maybe some selling teams here on this call. If you're just leading your conversations with an efficiency angle and a cost reduction angle, you're speaking to last year's priorities. 70% of investments now aim for outcomes beyond efficiency. We're back in the growth conversations, and that's a really positive angle for this year and beyond. And externally, go-to-market teams really should position AI around impact, not
Mm.
automation, but impact. How do I grow my revenue by tying their use case directly to that revenue creation?
Got it.
So next level of the onion here is I love this as a marketer. It's like trying to pick your favorite child. There's probably about 30 plus, way more, 60 plus charts in our research. And they're all my favorite children, but this is definitely one of the takes the top. Um, this is the sort of the part of the shortlisting story that I want to get right. The underlying premise, and at Infuse, we've been talking about this for a couple of years. I know Sixth Sense has been talking about this for a few years as well. Marketers across the board, you've for sure heard the day one shortlist story. In
Mm.
2025, um, about 80% of the time, buyers were actually about 84, 85% of the time to be exact. Last year, buyers were choosing vendors off of their day one shortlists. This
Mhm.
year, the number is 95%. So as buyers and buying groups sort of sit down and decide to make their technology purchases, they will make a short list. Here are the vendors I know. Here are the vendors I heard about. Here are the vendors my friends told me about. Here's what I heard in Slack or in webcasts like this. That
Mm.
is their day one shortlist. The research tells us that 95% of the time, the vendor that wins that deal will be the vendor that sat on that shortlist on day one. That's huge, right? That to me tells me if you're not within that 95%, you're gambling with your investments.
Mhm.
That is not a value driven methodology. And so coming back here to this specific chart on the brand, so from our research this year, 87% of the buyers, if we add up all of those numbers, 87% of the buyers will say that knowing the brand influenced their shortlist. And that makes sense. I need to know who they are in order for me to sort of put them down on my shortlist. Only
Mhm.
4% of buyers say that brand doesn't matter at all. So,
Mhm.
but let's look at how that works. So the 42% say that brand is moderately influential. So meaning brand is important, but there's something else there that also is equally important. And in the interest of time, I'm not showing you all of this data, but I'll sort of tell you that that something else is technical fit.
Okay.
Technical fit wins the conversation. Not only do I need to know the brand and trust the brand, but in order for me to continue the conversation with you, first and foremost, I need to make sure that you fit within my ecosystem. Now, Mani,
Yeah.
you and I won't disclose the age, but we're old enough to remember sort of the old IBM selling model of circa 1964.
Right.
Remember that sort of the old model, and that was driven by sort of IBM was selling really big, really expensive mainframes. They needed to
Mm.
pre-qualify their clients again and again and again and again before they put them in touch with their most expensive resources, aka the solutions engineers at the end
Right.
of that deal. So right, so that selling process is a process that we all are familiar with. I have a pre-call, then I have a call, then I have a post call where I may discuss some pricing. Then a couple of calls later, or maybe a couple of face to face meetings later, I'll be put in touch with a solutions engineer to evaluate whether that fits within my infrastructure. That is all the sales process of yesterday. It doesn't work anymore. And the buyers are telling us very clearly in the data, I need to know that technically your solution fits within my ecosystem on day one.
Yeah.
So it's really important, almost equal to the brand.
Mhm.
That's the outcome of this chart. So coming back to the brand, 87% of buyers say that brand influences their decision very early on. That's what
Mm.
we call internally the dark funnel.
Right.
The buyers are conducting their research way early. They're conducting it often in the dark, meaning they're not going to fill out your form. They're not going to quote unquote uncover themselves until they're absolutely sure that they're ready to talk to you. They're ready to ask those questions. And so
Yeah.
the takeaways, nothing new. We've been talking about this for a year, two plus. By the time a buyer takes your call, they have already decided that your brand is credible.
Hmm.
They're done. Brand trust is built by anticipating and answering their questions. Your
Mm-hmm.
job is not to build brand awareness on that call. Your job is to answer their technical questions clearly and with conviction.
Mm-hmm.
So the next slide is one that really had me sit back and look at the data. Just, I can't believe what I'm seeing. Is this really what I'm seeing in the data? Are we really there yet? And so let's sort of talk about this question. How satisfied are you with your vendor in achieving, supporting, et cetera, right? That was the question we asked. So only 26% of buyers, that's sliced in blue, are, quote, very satisfied with their current vendor, meaning, right, a whole chunk of them are not. Nearly half, 48%, are just somewhat satisfied, right? So
Mm-hmm.
that's not loyalty, that's inertia. 48% is part of that 69, somewhat satisfied or neutral. So let's think about what that means. Somewhat satisfied or neutral. You're fine. You haven't given me a reason to leave, but you haven't given me a reason to stay either. And so for
Interesting.
vendors who are looking at competitive displacement options this year, that is exactly the opening.
Hmm.
Uh, the majority of the market is sitting in relationships where the incumbent is doing just enough to not get fired. They're not delighting their customers anymore. And so this
Interesting.
really creates an opportunity for vendors to innovate beyond the status quo. Also, in the interest of time, I opted to not include the very next question we asked, but I'll sort of disclose what the data showed. The very
Yeah.
next question we asked was, okay, why? What are these vendors not doing for you to give us those answers, right? To create a chart, a scary looking chart like this. And the number one reason on that list was innovation.
Ah.
These vendors promised me that they would innovate with me. And by the way, not just innovate for the problems I have today, but
Hmm.
actually innovate for the problems I may have tomorrow.
Right.
And the number one answer on that other question was they're not delivering that. They're not delivering innovation. So it kind of works. I'm drinking a Coke, but if I have a bottle of Pepsi, I'll switch.
Got it.
This is a, I can't really state this, overstate this. This is a massive opportunity
Hmm.
for vendors to both delight your existing customers,
Mm-hmm.
but also look at competitive displacement opportunities in 2026. Although the market is shifting and the times might be a little bit scary, we're seeing an enormous opportunity for tech vendors this year to take this information and really break through. But there's more in that data mining. And I want to take you through the next. We just have a couple more, and then we'll get to Q&A.
Mm-hmm.
So um, this was actually a hypothesis that we were sitting on mid 2025, because as we were pulsing the market, sort of with our customers and partners and other marketers we were talking to, uh, we had a hypothesis that the market was accelerating. I think we're all intrinsically right feel that, but it became so clear in the data that the buying cycles are accelerating.
Hmm.
Um, Deals are moving faster, really to meet the expectations of technology to impact the business. The average cycle here, and again, this data, so let me take a step back. SMB through enterprise. Enterprises take the majority of the data, or the majority of this data set. Mid-market is a good sample in the data as well. So the average cycle there dropped from 8 months last year to 7 months in 2026. So on the face of it, you go, that's just 1 month. That's not huge. But when you're trying to influence these ever growing buying groups, 1 month can make all the difference. And that is massive in the world of B2B marketing. So
Hmm.
here in the data, we'll see that the 3 to 6 months jumped to 39%. The 12 months dropped from 22 to 16. That is not a margin of error. That is an actual, real, significant drop in the data. And so then we ask, right? You and I talked a little bit about this in our pavilion channel and offline, right? As we moderate the channel, why, right? This is a paradox. Why are we seeing this paradox? And so the overwhelming answer is AI is creating the urgency. Buyers are feeling like they're left behind. I don't know about you, but I wake up with that feeling every single day. What else do I not know? What
Mm-hmm.
else is out there that I need to learn? And really, AI is what we're seeing in the data is collapsing the awareness cycle in the buying journey. I no longer need to go through several months of learning and reading and figuring things out and finding things out. I can write a prompt and I'll have all the answers at my fingertips. And this is exactly the expectations from the executive teams and the investors. That is the paradox. We're moving faster while simultaneously drowning in options and information. And so let's think about what that means psychologically. Speed plus overwhelm does not equal confidence. In
Mm-hmm.
most humans, it will create anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
Our buyers are anxious, they're feeling anxiety. This is also really interesting because, we've been tracking buying groups year over year. Um, the paradox here is accelerating because as buying cycles are compressing, buying groups are expanding. Again, year over year comparison here, the average number has moved by plus one person year over year. So again, on the face of it, you go, all right, minus 1 month, plus one person, not a big deal, but it is a big deal because as marketers and go-to-market practitioners, we have less time to convince more people. And these people are anxious because as we learned, they're drowning in information and they have less time to make decisions. So that will create anxiety in the market. So that doesn't work in our favors for any go-to-market teams here or sales teams who are relying on a single champion. If you're still that person and you're working on your single champion and you're hoping that that champion will corral the buying group and get to a consensus and make that decision, you're really doing yourself and your company a disservice because each stakeholder is conducting their own research in the dark funnel. If you and I, man, you're buying a solution, you're going to do your research, I'm going to do mine. We're going to come to our own decisions at some point. We might text each other at 8 p.m. at night. And so they arrive at the evaluation with opinions already formed, right? And oftentimes the champion, the single person, cannot control the narrative anymore because it's already being written before you ever get to that conversation. And so the
Yeah.
takeaway here for the go-to-market and the selling teams is champion-based selling is no longer an option. You have to multi-thread from day one because you have more people to talk to and you have less time to do it. Map the buying group. Sales Navigator is your friend and understand each buyer priority, feel their anxiety and answer their questions before they even ask them. And so this is what sort of we call here the AI paradox. Buyers are adapting to markets in transition and really trying to figure this out as we are trying to sell them. It's like changing up an engine on a plane that's in motion. Um, let's talk about content. Just two more slides, and then I know there are some questions I think in chat. This is the trust gap in sort of in motion. You will see that on this question, vendor content is still the top source of information at 24%. So they are coming to your websites to read your content and get information, but understand that internal peers is at 22 and experts and SMEs is at 20%. So these are all nearly tied, 24, 20 to 20%. What this tells us is that buyers are consuming our content, but then they're immediately turning around and verifying it through other sources. Confirmation bias. We call this the skeptical buyer, and it really has escalated since 2024. We first wrote about the skeptical buyer 2 years ago, and it's even more evident in our data today. Buyers are not taking anything at face value. Every claim we make, every stat on our deck, every ROI promise, they will cross-reference it with colleagues and outside experts. So the takeaway here is, I started saying this phrase in Q4 ever since we got a hold of this data. Nothing should leave your ecosystem without evidence attached. Your marketing collateral, your sales cadences, what you say on your website, how you talk to your buyers and partners. Really, I just hope that we all adapt this mantra. Nothing leaves my ecosystem without evidence attached. We have to lead with credibility, with high quality content that drives trust with our very anxious buyers. So we are assuming, right, at this point that everything that we say will be fact checked with external sources. So we have to lead with those proof points. Credibility has to be earned. And then finally here, I love sort of talking about content here because this is a really, really important question. How many unique pieces of content, information, resources do you consume? And so, again, year over year, we say the same thing. Buyers are consuming more content than ever. The average number of pieces year over year went up from 8 to 9 across our data set. But here's a really critical insight that we see sort of throughout this data. Again, I don't have time to go into 60 plus whatever charts. More content does not create more confidence. Buyers are feeling uncertain despite all of that large consumption. Why? Because they're not reading to learn, they're reading to defend. Every piece of content is their ammunition for that internal case they're building with those really large buying groups and the executive teams who want their decision now in the collapsing awareness stage. And so this is the inefficiency spiral. Buyers are continuing to consume more content. They're feeling less confident. They're trusting less of it. Vendors continue to produce more content, right, driven by analytics, thinking that that content is actually being consumed because the buyers are reading. People, buyers are not reading. They're not reading your content to learn. They need to defend their position internally so that they don't get fired. And so if there's one takeaway here on this specific slide is let's stop, pinky promise, marketer to marketer, stop overwhelming your buyers with collateral. More assets actually create friction. So instead of asking this question, what else can I send you? Right? I hear that often. You're on a phone with a prospective buyer. What else can I send you? What other information can I send you? The question that you should be asking is, what is the one thing I can send you that will help you decide and defend your position? They're desperately looking for that one thing. So focus on precision, not on value, not on volume. And so there are really, if we boil all of this down and more, there are really three takeaways from the voice of the buyer. Haven't even gotten into the voice of the marketer. That's probably a separate discussion. But AI maturity is the number one. Buyers do not want your AI vision. They want proof that it actually works, and they want ROI this year. Number two, there's trust deficit. The majority of the purchases will stall because vendors will engage at the wrong time or fail to communicate value, or because you're not part of that 95%. And Lots of the market is in neutral position, just waiting for someone better to show up. And then the last one here is we have less time and more people to convince. Cycles have compressed, buying groups have expanded, they're consuming more content. Less of it is actually being productive and making the decisions. And by the time our intent signals have spiked, the influence window has already closed. Buyers are forming opinions before they ever get a chance to talk to us. And it's both about equal value, brand, and technical fit. So lots of
Wow.
information here.
No, that was amazing. That was amazing. I think I'm assuming the folks listening, just got as much out of it, hopefully, that I did. I mean, so I have a whole lot of questions, but I'm going to try to
Whoa.
pace myself here a little bit. But if we can, Victoria, frame it around, as you said, that it's a tremendous opportunity for innovative, younger vendors, newer vendors who want to, offer solutions, let's say into the mid market, even into the enterprise. And so you have framed it as the buyer seller trust gap, which
Mhm,
and how do you close the gap? How do you
mhm.
come together? How do you make the GTM teams on the seller side be able to connect with the buyer? It's amazing stuff. And you've really called out how it's all playing out now in the last 6-12 months. The old games, old models are all gone. I mean, it's a whole new game. So let
Playbook
me
is
ask you
over.
this.
Yeah.
And let me ask you this. So one of them you mentioned is they still are not comfortable. What is the role of so-called POCs, proof of concepts? Is that something your survey looked
Ooh,
into?
that's a really good question. So that is not a question that we ask in our survey. Maybe we can do a pulse at some point mid-year, specifically focusing on the POC, on the freemium, on like the product-led, right? Product-led growth
Correct,
and
correct. Because that's again
channel.
about building confidence to build the long-term relationship. A lot of, we're seeing a decent amount of that happening, right? Where, a mid-market company looks at a smaller vendor, they perceive risk, they perceive, oh, is this going to work the way we want, et cetera, et cetera. They're like, hey, can you do a 3-month POC? Can you do a 6-month POC? So anyway, that was one. But if that's
That's
something,
that's a really interesting point, particularly for newcomers into the market,
right.
where maybe your brand is not yet established. You're not part of the 95%. You need to sort of
Mhm.
build that. Excellent point.
Got it. Now, the other thing to ask you was, there were so many things we covered. Let's talk about, you mentioned you have to be present on day one, you have to
Mhm.
answer your questions. Um, there's a whole slew of, call it, new category of tech and tools that are starting to pop up, as you've seen, right? So-called marketing agents on websites.
Yes.
um, all these agents that can help sellers get educated. So instead of having solution engineers, you have literally every seller is much more
Mhm.
educated on the entire product suite, and it's all like AI is driving that. There's always a question of accuracy of the information that sellers can have to communicate back to
Sure.
the buyer, potential buyer. Um, do you have any point of view on that? And
I
again,
do.
it's the same
I
old,
do.
same old. They have to build their trust, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah, I do. And this is I'm going to take a little bit of a detour to answer your question, if you don't mind,
Yeah,
because this is another really important piece for marketers to understand. Another chart that I didn't show you, but the one that gave me a significant pause. That was coming from our voice of the marketer side of the house. So
right.
the second survey that we did, and we simply asked marketers about their conversion rates. We marketers like to geek out on our conversion rates. How are things progressing through the funnel, right? It's the age old question. We're
Mm,
always curious.
mm,
Um, I sort of expected to get some outcomes of that question, but I didn't expect to get quite the data, sort of the data science outcome that I did. So here's the end result there. Um, for anyone interested, my LinkedIn DMs are open. Happy to sort of show you that. But if all you're doing is optimizing your website, and by the way, that's super super important. I'm doing that with my team. Incredibly important. That's
mm,
probably a whole other session that we can do, Mani, separately, right? Is like,
Yeah.
how do you actually do it? How do you answer questions? How do you get in front right into that night? That's a whole science and an art. But on what our marketers are telling us in this survey, and these are like hundreds of marketers that we talk to, is that on an average basis, we will need 18,000 qualified website visitors, not job seekers, qualified website visitors in order to generate one revenue outcome. So if
Amazing.
we follow the conversion path right on the website, so 18,000 visitors to generate one conversion outcome. And so, yes, your website has to be so perfectly positioned. You need to be able to answer their questions before they ask them. So anticipate what they are. And we have all of the tools at our disposal. Yes, we can talk to our sales team. We can talk to our client success team. We have call recordings, Gong or Clarion, whatever you're using. We have all the cadences. We have all the reply rates. We have AI that can oversee all of this production. We know exactly the questions they're asking. And so we just need to work that extra mile, right?
Got it.
And connect the dots.
Now,
Did I answer your
I just
question, or
want
did I not get quite close enough?
no. Let me continue on that path. You said 18,000 to one, and it's a conversion event. Obviously a close one deal, but are we talking when you're selling to the mid market, enterprise? What's the ACV? What's the deal size? I'm just trying to get some clarity around.
Yeah, so this is generally across our entire survey, global SMB
Got
to
it. Got it.
enterprise.
So it's a reasonably high
We are
value transaction, right? So
correct.
meaning it's
We're trending a
50K,
little bit
100K.
heavier. Yeah, we're
Right.
trending a little bit heavier on the enterprise in this particular data. Again, we
Got
can
it.
slice the data and really sort of try to get very
Got it.
curious if we wanted to.
No, I think this is very interesting also for me because we talk to a lot of founders and tech CEOs and people building companies and building businesses, and they all there's so many fundamental questions they're all struggling with. Fundamentally, as you said, this is a very important point. Okay, you got to bring in 18,000 qualified visitors, and the outcome will be you get a 50 to 100K ACV deal out of it, right? So there's the two sides of it.
Mhm.
You brought up
Mhm.
the whole notion of, as a smaller brand, how do you build trust?
How do you
You
build
said,
trust?
okay, you got to be there day one. Let's talk about tactics. Let's talk about younger companies. How can they build trust? What
Yeah.
have you seen? Kind of top
So
three ways to build
yeah,
trust? Yeah.
so a question that we often get asked by our prospects and our clients is, what content works. So we know that we have the survey that, right? What are the channels? Where do these people congregate? Where do I influence, right,
Yeah.
the decisions that are being made, and how do I do it? Your first party channels, your website, etc., are incredibly important. And again, that's probably a separate call, right? That's a separate webinar that you and I can do on
Hmm.
how do you make sure that your SEO is there?
Yeah.
What exactly, how do you exactly drive up AEO? How do you answer their questions? How
Yeah.
do you position the website so that it's ranking in AI search engines and
Agreed.
and LLMs, right? That's a changing
Right.
science every single
Yeah.
day,
And
and probably an
right.
hour.
We're putting that in the inbound marketing bucket, but yes,
Correct,
that's
correct.
inbound. Yeah.
Um, there are other levers that we can push on as well. Third party partners is really, really important.
Hmm.
Your partnership ecosystem is also
Yeah.
really, really important. 70% plus, I think, is the latest stat that I heard. 70% plus of the deals are going to be made through a partner ecosystem this year, very similar to last year. I think it's
Hmm.
like in the low 70 percentage. Don't quote me. We can look up the numbers offline.
Got it.
Um, all of that is really, really important. Please, let's stop producing generic content. The
Hmm.
awareness window has collapsed. We need to be evaluating our brand, but also answering their technical questions all at the same time. And
Hmm.
really, I look at content as information.
Hmm.
What information are we giving these buyers before the buying group has ever formed, before
Hmm.
the intent has ever spiked, before they filled out a single form on the website? but what is the information? How is it that our company, our brand presented out there, and is it as answering their questions ahead of time, right? Like the phrase I always say, just answer their damn questions
Mhm.
across all of the available channels.
Yeah, got it, got it. So I think you're right. I mean, that I keep coming back to, I think that's where the whole automation you're starting to see
Hmm.
in buyers being able to ask questions without talking to a person.
Yeah,
And then the new AI tech tools, apps that are coming up for,
yeah.
I call them marketing agents, seller enablement agents. I think that there's a big opportunity there. We don't play in that space, but I'm just thinking as you're talking, I think there's an opportunity for all those folks.
Same,
Um,
of course, but like we almost have to be, because it's the consistency of information.
yeah.
It's how the information is presented. It has to be equally presented to both humans and robots. So when you're
Mm,
writing content, aka information, we
mm,
have to think about both human consumption as well as robot consumption.
right.
So human, right? It should not sound like a robot wrote it.
Hmm.
That's like a human value that we put on the information that we consume. To
Hmm.
a robot, it has to be very structured. It has to be consistent. It has to write the right schema. It has to write the right keywords, clusters. It has to have questions and answers in a contextual format, in the rich text format. There's a whole sort of technical SEO component here that has to
Mm,
be exactly right and perfected in order for the robots to actually even query your website and your information. So
mm.
really a lot here.
Right. And the third area, and by the way, you of course know this, right? Is I think of it as knowing, as you said, knowing when the buying groups are starting to get formed.
Yeah.
Being there on day one, to be there on day one, you need to know about all the signals, all the intent,
Yes. Yes.
intent that you can glean from your own website, intent that you can glean from across the web,
Correct.
on social channels, on Reddit. So the whole idea of building that, we call it a signals hub, with
Hmm.
aggregating all the buying signals, person level, company level, making sense of all the signals, ranking order, prioritizing companies, right, for people to go after, and getting those outbound messages, so you're at least in front of them at the right time to see, are they willing to talk to you? Are they going to talk to you? Ready to have a conversation. But anyway, it's very
That's
interesting.
exactly, by the way, Mani, that's exactly, I know we have maybe a minute or so. That's
Yeah,
exactly what we talk about in our pavilion group. That's what you and I geek out about offline,
right.
concatenating all of those first party, third party signals and trying to
Yeah,
make sense of those signals. And we have all of the available tools at our fingertip now. We
right,
have AI agents that we can build. We have multi-agent systems that we can build. We can partner with our partners across the board.
right,
But looking across all of those systems to then make a decision, where is that buyer, where is that buying group, when is the right time to engage, how is the right time to engage, what channels are they engaging, what content they're consuming, what information can I send you. uh, that becomes the art and the science of this whole
very much,
enterprise.
very much. I mean, the people are just literally trying to figure this out with all these new
Yeah.
workflow tools and N8Ns and others,
Yeah.
and
And it
building
in and
organizations.
play and
Yeah,
combination and all
yeah,
of the AI LLM that can feed you and
got it,
prioritize this data for you.
got it.
Yeah.
So yeah, in the last minute or so, Victoria, let's do a quick recap for folks. I think we've had a really good bunch of people listening in here to this. So it's all been about how do you build trust between uh, vendors, providers, tech providers, and in a year, as you said, with a lot of call it willingness to look at new AI tech and tools, but a lot of concern in that they don't know who to believe, right? So yeah,
So yeah, number one, let's give our buyers the information they're looking for, not the quantity,
yeah,
but the quality information. Answer their questions and help them make that decision,
got it,
right? Be the voice of truth. What's the one piece of information I can give you to help you defend your decision and build consensus among your buying group?
got it.
Also help that champion build consensus, right?
Hmm.
It's up to us to multi-thread to reach out to the whole buying group.
Yep,
Um, Next, there are more people to talk to, less time to do it. So as marketers and sellers and go-to-market practitioners, we really have to set up the infrastructure in the back end to speak with one voice.
Hmm.
right? What's the messaging? How do I do it? This is not about sort of that dichotomy of sales and marketing. By the way, I hate that discussion.
Yeah.
But it's really how do we go after the market and how do we speak it as one voice from one brand.
You
And
know,
then
a friend
finally,
of mine calls that the enterprise POV, but that's we can talk about that more.
exactly, yeah, we can talk
Yeah.
about that for sure.
Mm.
Um, and the market is primed for switching vendors is a really interesting discussion that again we can unwrap. I think we can spend hours talking about as well that as well. But the promises we make to our buyers we have to keep.
Mhm.
If we promised to our buyers that we're going to innovate with them today and tomorrow, we have to do it because otherwise
Mhm.
we're going to be sitting in a year like 2026 where the majority of the market is
Great.
primed for switching.
Yeah. So, Victoria, I'm going to put up the thank you slide. If you could tell people how they can reach out to you, connect with you, and let's wrap it
Yeah,
up there. Yeah.
Mani, thank you so much for having me today. That is my LinkedIn profile. That is my email address. I am on, like most of us, 24/7. I'd be happy to hear from anyone on this call.
Okay. All right. Amazing session. Thanks, everyone. That concludes episode 44 of AI GTM Talks. Thank you. Bye for now.
Bye.